Today, we're diving into one of the most destructive habits in marriage, defensiveness. It feels so natural, so normal, but it quietly kills connection. And most couples don't even realize that they're doing it. Today, we're going to talk about another losing strategy, and that's defensiveness. Defensiveness is a favorite in our coaching practice. Couples really love this strategy. It's super easy to do. And in my observation of couples, defensiveness is one of the most corrosive behaviors of all because it goes against the very purpose of marriage. So I'll let Robert kind of explain what we mean by that.
Well, I love that you said it's the favorite among our coaching clients.
It's just the most common.
It's easy to do.
It is.
And it's sort of ingrained. And as you know from listening to us, we believe that relationships are an upper level division college course in personal development. And there's nothing that pushes you to confront your own crap, your own limitations, more than being in a committed relationship. When couples struggle, the marriage is doing exactly what it's designed to do, which is to expose your limitations and grow you up in that relationship.
So if you believe, like we believe, that marriage is a divine institution that is designed to make you a better person, then you have to call out defensiveness as what it is. It's the enemy to the very purpose of marriage. It's the enemy because defensiveness is non-accountability. At its core, that's what it is. It's non-accountability. It's the antithesis to growth.
If you're new to the show, we'd love to give some quick background on one of our favorite experts, Dr. John Gottman, as it relates to defensiveness. Dr. Gottman is world-renowned for his work in relationship stability and divorce prediction, and he spent over 40 years studying thousands and thousands of couples. He followed these couples over the course of their lives to see if divorce could be predicted. What he found was 8 specific markers that indicated a divorce was on the horizon. One of these 8 markers is something named the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which, as you probably know, is a reference to the book of Revelations. The 4 Horsemen John Gottman is talking about are criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and
Dun, 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 dun.
defensiveness. These 4 horsemen usually ride in together, and when they show up in a marriage, it's really concerning for the long-term health of that relationship.
So over the last few weeks, as you probably know, we've been covering common losing strategies that couples fall back into when they aren't getting exactly what they want out of their relationship. And sadly, none of these strategies work. Instead, they just drive a wedge between couples, making them further and further apart, less connection, less intimacy. So defensiveness is one of those strategies. And I know for some people, when you hear us talk about these strategies, the immediate response can be things like, oh no, oh my gosh, we do that. We do defensiveness. Oh my gosh, we must be doomed.
Or I don't do defensiveness.
Yeah,
It's not my fault.
Or one of those two things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can feel, though, like our relationship is truly hopeless or that we are powerless in our relationship, but that is not the case. There is so much power in understanding and changing these patterns in yourself. Even if your partner isn't making the changes with you or isn't making changes on the same time frame as you, it is still powerful. Just by going inward and working on changing yourself, you can have a profound effect on everything outside of you. You can have a profound effect on your partner, on your relationship, on your children, on those who are around you. I mean, you have no idea how big the ripple effect can truly be when you start to recognize these behaviors in yourself and start to work on changing them.
And this is why we want to teach you about these patterns and give you some guidance on how to overcome these behaviors in yourself. Here's the problem with defensiveness. It puts a full stop on growth. What happens in defensiveness is we don't look inward. We don't self-confront, and we refuse to look at how our actions might have even slightly contributed to the situation that we're in because, honestly, we're protecting our ego.
Oh, I want to talk about the ego.
Yeah, okay.
So what is the ego? The ego is a collection of stories that we have about who we like to think that we are. And the ego will defend those stories to the death. So let's say someone tells you that you're being, I don't know, selfish, ridiculous, whatever. If that goes against the story that you have about yourself, that you like to think about yourself anyway, then the ego is going to defend itself by projecting back at the source of that information.
Yeah. And defensiveness is defending the picture of who we think we are.
Mm.
When we hear negative things about ourselves, we react by defending our position, giving excuses, blaming the other person. All of these defensive behaviors are a way to deflect all this negativity that we're hearing about ourselves, usually back onto the other person who's giving the feedback. Even if that feedback is totally true, we just push it right back because our ego wants to protect itself. And actually, we're just trying to protect ourselves.
There's a quote that I heard long ago that hit me pretty hard, and it's from Byron Katie. And it starts out, she says, defense is the first act of war.
Mm.
So before I tell you the rest of it, I just want you to think about that. Let's say your partner, your spouse comes to you and says, hey, sweetie, that thing the other day, I was feeling really rejected. Or that thing that you said, it was unkind and it really hurt me. So defense is the first act of war. When we get defensive to that, that's when the weaponry comes out. We start pulling out all of our favorite weapons. There's a lot that we have to choose from. Whatever your weapon is, you just get those weapons ready to fire back at your partner. How many times has our defensiveness started an unnecessary and hurtful war with the person that we love?
When we become defensive, we're refusing to acknowledge that perhaps we are maybe being rejecting, or we're being hurtful, or we're being mean. Instead of considering that possibility, of course not, we're far more interested in preserving our false reality rather than taking an honest look at how our actions are impacting someone else or even our most important person in this relationship. And this destroys intimacy, not just sexual intimacy, but true intimacy, which is the level of closeness that you can feel with someone.
Real intimacy is I am willing to know you. I am willing to be known by you, even all of our ugly parts. Intimacy is being willing to look at the core of who someone else is and allowing that person to look into the core of who we are to see truth, not just their mask, not just their persona. And that is really what the definition of intimacy is. And this takes a tremendous amount of courage. Defensiveness doesn't allow for intimacy. It stops it in its tracks because we're trying to sell our partner on the story of who we want to be seen as. So we're not really willing to be known. And to add to that, we're also not willing to look at our partner's truth of who they are and how they are experiencing us. And therefore, we're not really willing to know them either.
This is a terrible cycle. It's so easy to do, and it's hardwired into us. And we have to work really, really hard to overcome it. I mean, think about when you were a little kid and your mom said, did you make that mess? And you're like, no. So automatically you lied and you became defensive, right? We find really clever ways to avoid looking in the mirror and seeing ourselves in its true light. Our ego uses half truths to justify defending itself instead of owning up and taking responsibility.
Love does really require quite a bit of acceptance, but it also requires looking in the mirror and dealing with our own immaturities for the sake of our partner, for the sake of ourselves, and for the sake of our relationship.
That's so hard. So hard even for me, but it's
for all of
so
us.
hard. Yeah.
If we're not willing to see inward and look inside and see the things that we don't want to see, then how are we ever going to grow up? How are we ever going to become better in our relationship?
And how's this relationship going to grow?
It can't.
Right. And here's the irony. Pushing away the mirror doesn't stop the people you love from seeing your true self, your true behaviors. They see the ugliness. It only just puts as Charlotte likes to say about me, puts your head in the sand so that you can't see what's going on. The sad and true part is your spouse, your children, they see your limitations very clearly, and they're not deceived by the way that you're deceived when your ego's taking over. They see the ugly parts better than we see them. And that's most often the case.
And because they see them, it impacts how they see you.
Yeah.
So very often, the reason our partner maybe either doesn't respect us or isn't attracted to us is because of these things that we're not willing to deal with in ourselves. It's no surprise that we all want to be wanted. We all want to be chosen. We all want to be desired. But often we are acting or functioning in a way that Anyone with any good sense is probably not going to find desirable because we're either being entitled or we're being controlling or we're being pouty, demanding, critical. So, of course, they're not going to respect us or perhaps find us attractive because these behaviors are not desirable and we're not willing to deal with them.
And that's interesting in relationships, because how many times have you heard or worked with clients who've said, I'm just not attracted to him anymore,
I know.
or I can't stand that person, or they're really driving me crazy. And it's because we're not willing to own our stuff. I feel like getting a ball cap with just those initials on it. Just own your stuff.
Yeah.
Just put it on
I
and
mean,
wear it
there
for
was
every
a time in our
podcast.
relationship that I remember when we broke it down later on, not in the moment, but later on, there was a time you told me, hey, I've always found you attractive, but there was a time in our relationship when I didn't find you attractive, not because of my outward appearance, but because of the lack of integrity I had with myself and my willingness to work on my behaviors that weren't attractive.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think you guys have a pretty good idea of what defensiveness looks like, but let's make a quick list of some specific ways that we do defensiveness. Just like the other losing strategies, you can do defensiveness from the one up or the one down position, and you can do it overtly or covertly. When you're defensive from the one up position, which is a superior position,
Mhm.
it's more direct. This is when you usually feel like you've been hit with a 10-pound cannonball. So I'm going to hit you with I'm going to fire back with a 50-pound cannonball.
So what might that sound like? So let's say I come in and I say, Hanny, do you remember to take out the trash this week?
Yeah, what the crap? You knew I was busy. Why don't you get off your lazy butt and do it yourself? Why don't you take the trash out for once? That was mean.
That was mean, a
I
little
can't.
mean spirited.
Yeah, that was a little mean spirited. I
So
don't think I've ever said that, by the way, but
that might be the 10-pound cannonball hitting you back with the 50-pound
yeah.
cannonball. Another example would be shifting the blame. Shifting the blame might sound like, I know I've been a little critical, but don't you see how your rejection of me is the reason why it's making me crazy?
You're,
If you were just nicer to me, I wouldn't need to be so critical. It's
I
all your
love,
fault.
I love that. And when we're defensive from the one down position, it's a little bit more passive aggressive or subtle. And this can look like denying, dismissing, shutting down, pouting, or just acting hurt. Like, well, I don't do that. You're making a big deal out of nothing.
Mm. Or why are you always picking on me? Oh, this might be like the one down position. This is not my fault. It's not my fault. You're just picking on me, kind of with that whiny voice. And you think, well, that's not really defensiveness, but is it accountability? No, it's not accountability. So it's defensiveness.
Yeah, it's just pushing off. Another example. Yep, you're right, as usual. And I'm always wrong. And I'm always the bad guy. And
Mm,
I got to tell you, I've used part of that phrasing before.
yeah.
So either way, in these examples, it's a deflection. It's still refusal to take an honest look at yourself and deal with those things that someone is sharing with you.
So, I was thinking today, I have so much respect for the couples that are really willing to self confront and they have more respect for themselves, which I love to see. I think that's the whole thing with coaching is that you just help people to see things more clearly. And as I was thinking earlier today, if there was any advice I could give to my own kids when they're choosing a partner, it would be to pick somebody who is willing to self confront.
Yeah, how do you find a person who's willing to self-confront? I think it's the way that it lands when you're having a conversation.
Hmm.
I think when you give feedback, and especially if you're trying to give feedback kindly, how's that feedback received? And and that is a great indicator of whether or not they're willing to look at themselves. All right. So what would be the antidote for defensiveness? It's really simple. The antidote is taking responsibility or owning your stuff, right? So when I feel my defense is rising, there's a couple of things I try to do. First, I just take a couple of deep breaths and make sure I'm in my wise mind. And then I might say, and we have a couple of favorites, but Charlotte has one that she likes that I say.
I love it when you say, "Help me understand."
Yeah.
When I'm giving feedback, instead of just first putting up your guard, putting up a wall, often you'll say, "Help me understand."
Yeah. And I think, and the reason I like that saying, the help me understand saying, is it's a little bit of a buffer. I try to put that out
Mm,
first. So it tells me like,
Calm down.
There's more information here, and I'm just receiving information. This is just information to make me better. So it tells me that. And then at the same time, I'm just remaining calm.
Is it for you? Is it kind of like, is it like a pattern interrupt so that you don't hop back into an old pattern
Yeah.
of defensiveness?
Yeah, it is. And that's probably the one I use probably more than anything, right?
Mm-hmm. What else do you say?
And then probably I will lead with our other one, which is, what are your concerns?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe tell me more. So
Yeah.
I'm really trying to just remain curious and listen to the information I'm receiving
Before immediately responding.
Absolutely. And these phrases are so awesome because when I start to get defensive, and when we all get defensive, our mind is closed, and it's closed to new information. It's closed to seeing yourself more clearly. And these phrases sort of remind each of us, and it remind me, to stay open, right? This is not a criticism. This is just an observation, and observations can help me grow if I can keep my mind open to it and learn to own what part is mine. And I think there's an important part there, because if automatically our ego is letting us drive into defensiveness and absolutely nothing is my fault and I absolutely did nothing wrong and I am perfect, then it's always going to be a mistake. So taking in new information, help me understand, tell me more, is always about, like, what part of that can I own? And I can choose to discard some of it. But if I'm honest with myself, I need to own a part of it.
And it is hard. But when our partner tells us something about ourselves, we really do need to start listening. We need to be saying, again, like Robert just said, tell me more, help me understand. What is your perspective? And on the inside, I think there's things that some self-talk that we can be doing on the inside as we're listening, like, okay, how might this be true? What part of this is true? Not, oh my gosh, this is so wrong. They're so not right about any of this, but how might this actually be true? One of the most important things I tell couples is that, first of all, listening is the hardest position to be in. Speaking is actually easier than listening. Listening is very difficult. But as you're listening, just filter. Just start filtering what is true. Scan all the things that you're hearing. What is true in what they're saying? And when we start to prioritize what is true over our ego's need to be right or our ego's need to be validated, we become such better listeners. And of course, it's difficult. It's difficult because we don't want to take that information that invalidates our current view. But here's the thing. You don't have to ever accept anything that your soul truly doesn't recognize as truth. But it is possible to still try on your spouse's perspective, kind of like a hat, and just ask, like, okay, what might be true in it, even if it's 5%. Because that is going to, whatever that little piece is that is true, is going to help to increase the pool of information and the pool of intelligence between the two of you.
Yeah, and it will soften your partner up. And owning your part is super important in this. It continues the dialogue, it continues the communication, and it lowers the defensiveness on both sides. If I'm defensive and I say nothing's my fault, and then I go to you and you're like, well, okay, now I'm pissed because you're not accepting responsibility.
Yeah. So to fully quote Byron Katie, she said, defense is the first act of war. If you tell me that I am mean or rejecting, hard, unkind, or unfair, I say, thank you, sweetheart. I can find all these things in my life. I have been everything you say and more. Together, we can help me understand. And without you, how can I know the places in me that are unkind and invisible? So, sweetheart, look into my eyes and tell me again, I want you to give me everything.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me a lot about Brené Brown and her work on shame and vulnerability. And we love Brené Brown over here. So she's got, from her book, Daring to Lead, she talks about defensiveness that often comes from this place where we armor up. And we armor up to protect ourselves from feeling shame, from feeling not enough, or from the fear that we'll be exposed as a fraud or as flawed. But armor's heavy.
Yeah.
And wearing that armor keeps us from having real connection. I like to say, if you feel like you're not able to connect with your person, it's likely that they have their armor up. Brené has this powerful idea about feedback. She says, only take feedback from people who are in the arena with you. The ones who are also daring, who are also getting their asses kicked sometimes, the ones who matter. If it's mean-spirited or coming from the cheap seats, let it roll off you, let it drop at your feet. Just step over it and just keep on daring.
But here's the key part that ties right into what we're talking about today. If we shield ourselves from all feedback, then we stop growing. But if we engage with feedback completely, no matter how cruel it is, then we're going to armor up so thick that eventually we stop feeling anything. We stop feeling the hurt, but we also stop feeling the intimacy, the closeness, the connection, the love too. So real intimacy requires staying unarmored enough to be able to hear hard truth from our partner who is in this arena with us and take it in, hold it, learn from it, and grow from it. That is being courageous. That is being brave. And defensiveness is a much easier path to take, but it's also one that will slowly kill the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap this episode, maybe we're going to leave you with two or three journaling questions for the week.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay. So question number 1, how does my functioning change when my ego gets hurt or criticized? And I might say, when I start feeling defensive.
Number 2, what wisdom do you want to remember the next time you start to feel yourself getting defensive? So for me, I love that quote that we shared today of Byron Katie. Remember, defense is the first act of war.
I just always remember to be curious because there's what can I learn from this? Number 3, what do I want to remember or say the next time I feel myself getting defensive? I always say, as we talked about that, help me understand your perspective. Find what part of that is yours, and then own it. It will keep everybody's defensiveness a lot lower.
Well, I think that is going to be a wrap for this episode.
So thank you so much for being here today. We're grateful for all of you. We kindly ask, if you haven't yet, please leave a 5-star review and a comment. It really helps us make a greater impact and reach more couples. And if you know someone who this episode might help, please consider sharing it.
Of course, be kind to each other this week. Take care of each other. Remember, it's the small things done often that create the biggest impact.
Until next time.